Sales are easy. It's making the call that's hard. Hi, my name is Dave Gallegos. I've spent the last 25 years in the mortgage industry and a lifetime in sales. In this show, I'll bring that experience, expertise, and the experts I've met to you with actionable advice to improve your sales. It's not magic. You just make the call. Hi, everybody. It's Dave Gallegos. We're back here for another episode of Make the Call, a podcast that's designed specifically for loan officers, but loan officers and real estate agents and really anybody in sales, because the concept behind Make the Call is just pick up the phone and make the call, have another conversation. That's really what this industry takes. So today we have a special guest. His name is Cache Nies, and I met Cache through a coaching program that we were both participating in, that we still both participate in. Young guy, new guy in the industry, newer in the industry. So you've been in the business now, how long?
6 years.
6 years, right on. So, and he's doing a great job and he's having fun. And I met him, and now that I'm doing these podcasts with guests, he was one of the first guys I thought of that was like, this would be really fun to do. So that's it. Welcome. Thanks for joining. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
It's going to be fun. So just first of all, I want to learn a little bit more about you personally. So Tell us about where you grew up, your family, how, because you're not from here. I know you're not from Colorado. So just let it rip.
So I get asked all the time if I was in the military because I've moved around so much. So I grew up in southern Utah. And then during my upbringing, I wasn't the best kid in high school. I got kind of shipped off, lived with my sister in Palm Springs, California. So I graduated high school from Palm Desert, lived there until...
Not a bad place to be.
No, it was great. It was great. But I moved to California expecting to live by the beach and everything. I didn't even realize the desert was pretty far from the beach, but it was great. I lived there with her. And then when I was 20 years old, I moved to San Diego. And I lived in San Diego for 9 years. That's where I met my wife and, spent my 20s. And then during the pandemic, me and my wife decided to move to Austin, Texas. My sister had lived in Austin, Texas. She really liked it out there. And the second time California was shut down, we were just like, we got to get out of here. So we moved to Austin. We lived there for 2 years. We got pregnant with our son, our firstborn son, Rhythm. Once she got pregnant, she was just like, this isn't where I want to be.
This was in Texas?
This was in Texas, yeah. I always relate.
Where was she from?
My wife is from Lake Tahoe. And
how did you guys meet?
In San Diego.
How though?
We met in a crosswalk. We actually bumped shoulders in a crosswalk.
Seriously?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Yeah. I mean, it went hilarious. Good. Yeah. So it was around Christmas time, 2019. So I moved to Texas in 2020. But 2019, I was at a Christmas party for work and just walking through downtown San Diego after a few drinks.
You already started in the mortgage business by now?
Already started in the mortgage business, started in 2019.
Okay.
I guess it was March, so I met her in January. Okay. But anyways, bumped shoulders in a crosswalk. And
interesting how this turned into a marriage proposal.
No. And then she was with a friend that I knew from a previous bartending job. Okay. And so I was like, oh, hey, what's up? And then I saw my wife and I'm like, oh, damn, let me go talk to her. And so I left my group and I turned around and I was like, hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Like, what's going on? And just started talking with them. Then I decided I was going to leave my friends and just go hang out with them for the rest of the night. Right. My friends decided to come too. Right. But then we just kind of all chased them around to some different bars and stuff and had a really good time.
Downtown San Diego is good for that.
It was good. It was good fun. We ended up going to like a speakeasy bar and did some dancing and stuff like that. And then, night was kind of ending. I lived in downtown San Diego. I had an apartment down there and I'm like, everyone want to come to my house? We can, hang out afterwards. And long story short, we all hung out for a while. Everyone Ubered home. I tried to get my wife's number. She's like, no, but you can follow me on Instagram. I'm like, okay. So followed her on Instagram. They all went on their way. And then it's a funny story. My wife actually, she played hard to get for a little while. This is what helped me in sales. But yeah, so, messaging her on Instagram, kind of no response. And then it'd be a little chatter back and forth. I kept asking her on dates. And then eventually about a month after, bugging her constantly, she decided to go on a date with me and the rest was history.
Took a month?
Took a month.
That's awesome.
A month of follow-up.
That's a month of follow-up. That's not long. No. A month of follow-up's nothing.
It wasn't too bad.
As compared to like getting a realtor to have a meeting with you, right?
Yeah, not too bad at all.
Yeah, that's awesome.
If I could get a realtor like in 4 weeks of follow-up,
you'd be thrilled, right?
Yeah, be stoked.
That's a great story.
Thank you.
That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
All right, fun. So you're in Texas, you have a baby, and your wife says, I don't want to live in Texas.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So my wife grew up in Lake Tahoe, California, in the mountains, right? And her sister used to live in Denver. And when I was in San Diego, one of my best friends lived in Denver. I'd been here a few times. And we thought a lot about going back to San Diego. But then there were certain things, home prices, and just things that made us leave. And we're like, let's go give Denver a try. We'll see if we like it. And now we just bought a house in Castle Rock. We've been here for 3 years and settling down and
I saw
making
about
this
the house. That's really cool. Yeah. Because I know you were talking about maybe moving back.
We were thinking about moving back or maybe moving to Reno because her mom lives there and it's close to Tahoe.
Yeah.
But no offense to anyone who listens to this that's from Reno. Reno's ugly, compared to Colorado.
I don't know anybody from Reno. So
Yeah, Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe is beautiful, but moving to Reno didn't make me excited. It was like if we were going to move there, we're moving there for Tahoe, which then in that case, we need to move to Tahoe. But then in that case, it's the same price as San Diego. And, we've been in Colorado now and we love the seasons. We love how green it is. I always think I don't really love Denver that much. That's funny. When people ask me about, the difference between Austin compared to Denver, I think that I liked the city of Austin. I didn't love Texas. And when I think of Colorado, I love the state of Colorado. I don't necessarily love the city of Denver, but I like the suburbs.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a vibe change in downtown Denver for sure over the last 5 years, obviously because of COVID. And then used to love going downtown. And now it's like, with the traffic and everything else, it's just like, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Which is too bad because it's a great downtown. It actually is a pretty cool downtown. Something about the vibe is different.
Yeah, but what I love about Colorado is all of the little towns and they all have their own unique feel and, just different little vibe, which is really, really cool. And it reminded me a lot of San Diego. You have all these like little beach towns around, or not even beach towns, but just suburbs of San Diego, and they all have their own feel. And I feel like Colorado's a lot of that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. All right, cool. Well, that's awesome that you guys got yourself a house. I know that's something that you were really shooting for when we first met. You were talking about that. You weren't sure what you were going to do.
Yeah. Well, and as a mortgage lender, it's like imposter syndrome is very real. And especially when I'm talking to clients and then it's like, oh, well, do you own a house? And it's like, no, I want to, but it just hasn't happened for me yet. So it was definitely a big check mark for me.
Right on. Well, that's cool. And now you have 2 kids.
Yeah, I got 2 boys. So I got a 3-year-old and almost 1-year-old. It's my son's birthday on Sunday.
No kidding.
Yeah.
My granddaughter's birthday is Saturday.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's awesome. We're having a party on Saturday.
Yeah, so is Jacqueline. Yeah, Carmela. So she's adorable. She is my daughter's twin. Like they're like twins.
That's got to be cool for you.
It's very cool
to see a second time.
It's the second time. And I was always a workaholic, and so I wasn't around my kids very much, and I don't feel like I missed out. I know I missed out, but I don't feel like I don't have any regrets about it. It would have been nice to spend more time with them. But now when I watch my wife babysit our grandkids, like I'll come home and she'll be sitting on the floor playing with them. And I'm like, so is this what you did when you were like home with our kids? And she goes, yeah. And I said, man, I'm sure glad I work because I could never do this. I don't understand that level of patience.
Oh, it's tough. It's a full-time job. My wife's a stay-at-home mom.
It's astounding to me to watch that level of patience. I couldn't do it. There's just no way I could just sit there and play with a kid who wants all your attention. I
24/7.
Yeah.
It's
every day.
It's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
I think having kids has made me respect women so much more.
What's your wife's name?
Holly.
So Holly's a champ.
Absolute champ.
You don't realize. I never realized I got 3 grown kids.
Yeah.
And when I watched her babysit our grandkids, I was like, is this what you did?
I mean, just the level of patience, and there's like just natural instinct that I feel like women have that
really interesting.
Men don't have.
I don't. I think some guys
I'm kind of the goofy, I like to play around dad, the fun dad. And then my wife, she just knows the things.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's been good.
Right on. Well, congratulations on your family. I see them on social media. It's really cute kids.
Thank you.
You guys are really a cute couple.
Thank you.
How did you get in the mortgage? Let's just step up. How did you end up in the mortgage space?
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I thought I wanted to be a firefighter, actually. So I was going to school. I took some fire safety classes. I was going to do the EMT course. And then I ended up moving to San Diego. And I started bartending, and I just fell into bartending, and I started to make good money bartending. I worked at, 2 pretty fancy hotels in San Diego and thought about becoming a sommelier. So I took like, a few sommelier courses. And working as a bartender, the number one question people always ask you if you work in restaurants is, what do you want to do with your life? And you're like, man, I'm making better money than you probably. I never even realized, because I used to make all
That's
this
funny.
cash. Hopefully this doesn't get shown the IRS, but I used to make all this cash and I could claim whatever I wanted. I'd make like $400 or $500 a day, claim $50, boom, tax-free cash, go to the bar that night.
Hard to buy a house with that.
It would have been hard. It would have been hard. But after doing that for a long time, I knew I wanted something different, and I was really looking for really anything. One thing that me and my family used to do all the time was we'd go to Lake Powell. Grew up going to Lake Powell. If you've never been, it's like my favorite place on earth.
Dozens of times. I don't know how many.
Yeah. But one time we're on a family trip at Lake Powell, and I'm talking to one of my dad's good friends, and he's like, what do you want to do? The conversation came up, and I was like, well, I think I'd be good at sales. Like I've thought about maybe real estate. My stepmom is a realtor, and I'm like, maybe real estate. And he's like, well, have you thought about mortgage? And I didn't even know what mortgage was. And I was like, no, not at all. He's like, well, I think you could maybe be good at it. I was, all right. And he's like, if you want to go try to get your license, if you get licensed, I have an office actually in San Diego, and I could get you in there. So long story short, I went and I failed my mortgage test actually 2 times. And then that third time, if you fail it, you have to wait 6 months to take it again. I was like ready to give up if I failed it again. I tried really hard. I passed and then got into the mortgage business.
It's not an easy exam.
No, it was hard.
It's not an easy exam.
My first time,
especially having and they train you on all kinds of things you don't need to know as soon as you get your license. That's what's kind of weird about
which
it.
laws amend which laws and are part of which laws and encompass other laws.
It's like high school testing. It's dumb.
Yeah. No.
Did you memorize enough stuff?
Exactly. Right. Well, and then they always have the trick questions too. Right. Took my test, passed, and then started work. So he had a mortgage division of AFN, so American Financial Network. So I did that for a year, still bartending at the same time. And then was working as a bartender and then got laid off during COVID. So in COVID, or furloughed during COVID, and I couldn't collect unemployment because I still had a job as a mortgage lender, but I wasn't really selling any mortgages. So I just kind of had to dive in. And at that point, I didn't quite feel that I had the support that I wanted. So I had a friend who was crushing it, who was based in Utah, and reached out to him and was asking him about his company. And that's how I got introduced to Intercap Lending, which was my company for a little while. So
right on.
Yeah.
And so what was your first, tell us about your first years in the business. Like, what was it like?
In the beginning, it was really tough, imposter syndrome. If we go back to that, I feel like I definitely had a lot of imposter syndrome I thought I was good at talking to people. Apparently I wasn't good at talking to people about mortgages, right? I didn't know my value proposition. I didn't know different things like that.
Right.
So I'd go to networking events and stuff like that. I also just treated it like a party in the beginning,
Really? What do you mean?
Well, in San Diego, you have a lot of nice broker caravans and $1 million mansions in La Jolla and stuff like that have some booze and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would go, have a good time and network and meet some people and stuff like that. But then in 2020, once I got furloughed, I was like, man, because I was working as a bartender still. I was like,
so you're still making decent money, bartending.
Yeah, I was comfortable. And then once I got furloughed, I was like, I need to really dial into this. So I seeked out a good mentor, and I just really started to learn a ton. And then, that was during the refi boom, and everyone around me was absolutely crushing it. And I was still building my business and reaching out to people I know and stuff. But it's the hardest part about when you first get in is getting your first few deals, getting your feet wet and being able to, articulate a CD and go over fees and be able to structure deals and have confidence in your conversations. Right. I think.
Well, and to know that you bring up imposter syndrome, to know that you're giving somebody good advice.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's important to you that you do something that's good for the borrower, good for the person who you're serving, then it's hard to fake it. I believe that it's hard to fake it if you care about that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a challenge. And for the people who don't have that gene in them to care about the people they're helping. I was around a lot of guys when I first got in the business that were like, wow, you're like a crook. You're not actually
trying.
You're trying to make and so it was just a weird environment to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, it was cool I always was fascinated with investing and money. And like, when I was little, I had saved money and bought a four-wheeler, and I was like really proud of that. Or
Cool.
like I was always into like investing and just like seeing returns and like how can you make money and different things like that. And once I learned about real estate and appreciation, and specifically during 2020 when it was like calculating, oh wow, you can save X amount of dollars per month. Like look at this cash flow that you'll make over the life of your loan. Like that kind of stuff really got me excited in the beginning. But then it was talking to people and getting them as excited as I was,
Right.
So I
Right.
kind of had a hard time with that. But
Yeah.
it was good. I started to do decent there towards the end of my time in San Diego.
Uh-huh.
And then I was confident. I was like, you know what? I can handle this. Like, let's move to Texas. My business it'll be fine.
So were you married by now?
No,
Okay.
no. Yeah. So we moved to Texas. We weren't married.
Okay.
And I remember I told my branch manager, Intercap, when we moved to Texas, I was like, hey, I'm moving to Texas. I didn't give him a heads up or anything like that. I'm just like, we've decided to move to Texas. That was basically, I wrote an email. And I was like, this is what I'm doing. I figured they would support me and help me. And at that point, they're like, hey, like, we want to support you, but we don't have any offices in Texas. They're like, you're not in the nicest way possible. Like, you're not sufficient enough to go to Texas and be on your own. Like, we think you'd be better served going to a new company. And that like really just put a damper in my plans on moving. I was like, gosh, dang it.
Yeah, but they probably did you a favor.
They definitely did.
They probably did you a favor. I'm actually impressed they said that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of companies would be like, oh, well, let's get a license in Texas and let's figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out, even though we know we can't support you. So they actually did you a favor.
It was a huge favor.
That's actually, I'm impressed.
My time in Texas, I think, was like sending your kid off to college, was really kind of how it was. Funny. Because I moved to Texas and I immediately got hired with a company, a branch of Cross Country. They paid for leads, and they bought like $30,000 to $40,000 a month through realtor.com leads. And they paid for it through our rate sheets. So I was working on building this referral business, and I finally had a few agents and was getting referrals and different things like that. And then I moved to Texas, and my rates, everyone else has 2.5 and I have 4.25. And so I wasn't even able to compete at all. And really I was referring those all out to my friends, because I'm like, again, coming from that giving mindset, like I wasn't going to try to sell someone on that if they would even go with me. Right. So I worked at that company for about 3 weeks, and I was like, this isn't going to work. Like, this is not how I want to build my business. And then I seeked out a company that I knew in San Diego I had been to a gentleman's training with Cornerstone First Mortgage. And I worked there, and I reached out to them. I got hired. They had a branch manager in Dallas. So he was like, yeah, I could take you under. So I worked for him, and I was there for a few months. I closed a few deals with them, and I still wasn't very happy. I went to a mortgage marketing animals coaching thing because I started listening to podcasts a lot during that time.
Why?
Found Carl White and went to a mortgage marketing animals, talked to Carl White. And he's like, hey, one of my buddies just opened up a branch in Austin, and went and worked for his friend, Kevin Gillespie. I don't know if you would know him. I don't think he's with the mortgage firm anymore, but that's who I did work for.
I feel like I know that name, but go ahead.
He's a coach for the mortgage marketing animals.
Okay.
He helps the managers, I think, too, if you've ever done that. Yeah. But anyways, I got introduced to him and started working for him, and it was really great. I mean, if I didn't leave Texas, I probably would have never left his team. He was really, really great. But once we decided to move to Colorado, I was like, he's like, well, we'll support you if you want to move to Colorado and open your own branch and everything. I still didn't feel comfortable in doing that. So I just bounced all around. It was like 2 years. I had worked for 4 different companies, but really it helped me out a lot because I had to learn to make it on my own.
Yeah.
And I seeked out a lot of self-development and a lot of coaching and a lot of learning about personal branding and digital branding and how to meet agents and just like, it's like trial by fire of learning how to make it. And I think that time was very valuable for me.
Well, and going from one market to another market, then to a third market, that's challenging in itself because you can't get any traction, right? Like you're not gaining traction because you're there and then you leave. Like you had some realtors, but they're like, most realtors want to work with local lenders.
Exactly.
Right? So
every time I've left cities, I've lost probably 80% of the realtors. And now I think I'd be better because I have different strategies now. But even still, I have a handful of people that I work with in these different areas now.
That's good.
Yeah, but still going to a new city,
Right.
it was really tough. And like, it goes to show you, because this last year we're coming up on our 3rd year in Denver.
Right.
And like, I had a really good year last year.
Right.
But that's because I've finally have traction.
Well,
I've stayed in a
you've
place.
Stayed in the same place.
Exactly.
That's going to help. That's going to make a big difference.
A huge difference.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, then we got out to Denver, and it's been great. So
right on. So what I say about the mortgage business, I'm curious as to your take on it. The coolest thing about the mortgage business is that our time is our own, right? Like, you manage your schedule.
Yeah.
You manage your day. It's not like your bartender job where they expected you to be at the bar.
Yep.
Ready to pour a drink or pour a beer or make a drink for somebody at 5 o'clock, let's say. I don't know what time your bar shift started. They weren't at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
So, and you were expected to work, until closing time, right? 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was the gig. You couldn't not do that. Because if you didn't show up, or if you took a 3-hour lunch, they'd be like, dude, we got customers. Like, you can't do that, right? And so that's the hardest thing about the mortgage business that's the coolest thing about the mortgage business is you get to make all your own decisions. And then the hardest thing about the mortgage business is that you have to make all your own decisions.
I was going to say that. Yeah.
That's the hardest part. And I love that analogy of the job, because I always use the analogy of a grocery store. I worked in a grocery store when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And like, you had to show up if you had a 9 to 5:30 shift, you were stacking groceries at 9. And from 9 to 11, you worked, and then you got a break for 15 minutes, and you'd be back at 11:15 for 2 more hours before you get your lunch, right? Like, that's how it was. And if you didn't do that, you're going to get fired. And so, this job of you're essentially an independent business person in this environment where your company has little, if any, direct ability to influence what you're going to do today. Most people don't want that. Most people don't want to be associated with that, like going, I want to do what I want. And so what's that been like? Like, how have you, because that's the guys that are most successful are the most disciplined in their approach to like scheduling. Like, if you had to be at work from 9 to 11 and you had, or in our business, are you on the phone from 9 to 11? Did you make 2 hours worth of phone calls? Right. So talk about that. How has that been for you?
Yeah. So in the beginning, that was something that I struggled with, because I would, exactly like you're saying, like, it's freedom to do whatever you want, but also your income will reflect your output, right? So one thing I've really learned from—
Well said. Your income reflects your output and your input.
Yeah. So one thing that I really have learned from coaching is to have a dialed in schedule. And now I live by my schedule, to where if I don't have it on my schedule, it's bad, because I completely miss it. But having a schedule and having theme days and time blocks has been something that's been absolutely crucial.
Right on.
So you use whatever one you use. I love Google Calendar because I have it on my phone and I have it ready to go, and it sets reminders. And now when I have client appointments, every single client, I get them on my calendar. And I say, hey, I'm going to send you a calendar invite so you and I both don't forget. But that helps me stay disciplined with them as well. And then, the number one complaint that agents and really any referral source has is lack of communication. So one way that I've been able to over communicate is add my referral source to all of my calendar invites with any client that I get. So then they know what's going on, and I have that conversation up front.
I like that. That's a good idea.
We're not, I never expect you to hop on the call, but I want you to know what's going on. So that's one thing that's really helped me. And then, just time blocking. And the other thing I've learned from coaching is time blocking stuff outside of work, time blocking personal time blocking your routine in the morning, your gym. Because if you have it on your calendar, you hold yourself a little bit more accountable as well to do those things that are important to you.
So one of the things, and this is a challenge for a lot of originators, one of the things that's a challenge is you have an appointment on your calendar to prospect for business, as an example, and you don't honor it. And one of the things that I always say to people is like going, if you had a meeting with a client, you'd be there. And if you had an appointment with a realtor you've been chasing for 3 years, that you finally got the appointment, you wouldn't miss that. And if you don't treat your prospecting activity with that level of discipline, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for. Speak to that.
Yeah. And that can be tough. Like,
because you don't have to do it.
No, but it's the most important thing. I have a good example this week. Monday, I hit my power hour super hard. I ended up getting 3 leads and I got a deal, right?
Right on.
Tuesday, I had a good
What were you doing? What was the theme and what was the power hour? What did you do?
Power hour that day was calling real estate agents.
Okay.
So I was reaching out. I made 35 dials. I had like 22 talk tos, left voicemails, did the whole 9 yards, right?
Okay.
And I crushed it. I had a great day. I got leads. I had it. And then Tuesday came around and I was like, had the mindset of going in with my power again. I do Tuesday updates. But then afterwards, I will always want to, if I don't have enough Tuesday updates, right, is go back to calling agents. And I fell into the weeds of now working on the deals that I got on Monday. And that's why you get those ups and downs in the market. And what I found is that when you prioritize your power hours and your consistent sales activity, that's how you can have your sustainable business.
That's when you see the result.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
Good for
the
you.
most important thing. And I think that, the big problem a lot of people run into is letting go and having the support of someone that can be there to help you keep selling. Our job, like Amir always says, like, we're not loan officers, we're people officers. Like, we need to be out meeting as many people as we absolutely can, or at least making that
The
contact.
Scotsman's Guide rankings came out yesterday or earlier this week.
Yeah.
I pulled up all the Colorado loan officers and I downloaded them so that I could count how many of them are in there. There's 157 loan officers.
Oh, yeah?
And 157 loan officers in that group. We had 4 of them here.
Cool.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Of the 157 loan officers in the group, there were 16,700 loans were done. And knowing how much production we did here, our whole company did 3% of that entire amount of production. And I was explaining to my loan officers on some other software I have, I can look, Big Purple Dot, I can look up and see how much production was done in the state of Colorado last year. I think the number was $77 billion in originations. I think that's accurate.
Okay.
Our volume represented 0.5% of that.
Yeah.
0.5%.
Yeah.
Volume.
Yeah.
There is so much opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much more opportunity. And that was, we did our sales call this morning. We do it every Thursday. And what I was telling the guys was like, there's so many loans being done that all you have to do is get in front of them.
Yeah.
So to your point about just the loan officer with the most friends wins, right? Like at the end of the day, it's like, who's got the most friends?
Yeah,
Because the loans are happening anyway. You don't have to talk somebody into buying something they weren't going to buy, right? We don't sell a product that's not what our product is. We don't talk people into buying something they weren't going to get. We just have to get in front of them.
Yeah.
We just have to get in the way of that transaction. And the only way to do that is to have lots of conversations.
Well, and the craziest part about it too is like our income potential that you have from that is just crazy. There's no other industry that's like that. It's like, how many units do you have to do to make a good living?
Not many.
Not many. Exactly. And how many, Amir was talking about this today on a coaching call. He was saying like, when he's in an airplane and he looks down and you see all the houses, every one of those houses needed a mortgage.
Everybody
right?
needs a loan.
And then you get down to the street and it's like, you got to go talk to some people and stuff like that. And it can be so intimidating, but like, there is so many houses, like, don't care. Just go out and go for it.
I used to be whenever you drive by it, I was taking my dad to breakfast this last weekend. And we're driving down Broadway.
Yeah.
And we're going by all the car dealerships on South Broadway. And he goes, man, there's sure a lot of cars for sale. And I go, yeah. I go, do you ever think about who's going to buy all these cars? Because you can go buy a Toyota dealership and a few miles down the road, there's another Toyota dealership.
Yeah.
There's 500 cars for sale at this one, and there's 500 cars for sale at that one. It's like, who's going to buy all these cars? And that, because it's difficult to fathom how many people there are out there.
Yeah.
It's really just difficult to like put your mind around. When I say these 157 loan officers closed 16,700, almost 17,000 transactions that were going to happen no matter whether they did them or not.
Yeah.
Those loans were going to close.
Yeah.
Whether they did them or not, that means all you have to do is talk to as many people as you can. Yeah. That's a great business.
Yeah, no, exactly. And all I want is 100 of those.
That's it.
On my personal level, like if I could do 100 transactions, like that's what I want.
Number. Yeah, it's an insane thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the industry. I always say the one thing about the industry that I've always loved is that I sold some of the dumbest stuff in my life that you could sell. I sold pens. That was my first selling job, was pens. Nice.
You're the Wolf of Wall Street guy. Sell me this pen.
Yeah, it wasn't that, but it was It was advertising specialties. It was hokey. And we worked in a
Yeah.
boiler room. We had to start work at 5 o'clock in the morning. This was back in the late 70s, early 80s. I went to work because I just knew I didn't want a job. I was working in the grocery store still, and I was working on the night crew because I had a boat. I had a really nice car and a really nice boat. And I didn't want to go to college because I ended up graduating.
You had a car and a boat as a grocery store worker?
Yeah, I was living at home.
Nice.
So I don't know why my dad let me park my boat in his driveway. I would have never let one of my kids do that. I was just stocking shelves one night, standing next to a guy who was like 50, and I'm stocking shelves with him, and we're both making the same money. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here in 30 years. So I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this job. And I started looking for a job, and I was like, I want an opportunity to make money. And so sales, I was attracted to sales because there was no limit on, nobody else was going to tell you how much you're making.
Yeah. Same.
And everything I sold until I got in the mortgage business it didn't really improve anybody's life.
Yeah.
It was really improved my life if they bought something, but it wasn't bad I didn't sell anything that was bad for anybody. I just didn't sell anything that was really life-changing for anybody, like that made a difference. And when I first started doing this, that was the first time I'd sold a product where I went, wow, this is different. This is a whole different level because this makes such a difference in their future. And you save people money. And if you're doing a refinance, because I just started off doing refinances in 97. And then when I started helping people buy houses, there was nothing better. Like, this is such a cool job, plus the income potential and everything else. But talk about that aspect of it, because it always really struck me. And I think a lot of people get jaded by it a little bit, but I think it's important to not lose that. I hate to use the word innocence, but to not lose that innocence.
Yeah, no, definitely. When I first started, it was also refis. So it was really cool. Like, some of the best things that I had happened in the beginning was I helped an elderly couple who didn't trust anyone. And for some reason they trusted me. Wow. Right. But we ended up saving them $1,500 a month on their mortgage. And one of the guys, he was this older Hispanic gentleman, and he's working 2 jobs, like 80 hours a week. He should have been retired. And then his wife was a housekeeper at some place. They saved $1,500 a month. Like, was one of their pay stubs, every other week or whatever.
Right.
Like, it was game-changing money, helping people, like
life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, helping people consolidate debt. Now that I've been into this and I understand how it works, I've helped people consolidate over $50,000 in credit card debt and completely changed the outcome of their life. Hopefully they took the change in a positive way, but we've improved their cash flow significantly, right? Or like, helping first-time homebuyers. That I teach classes for down payment assistance here in Colorado sometimes. And I've helped clients through that. And most recently, I had a client back in December who I had closed, who came to class, and it was like, I don't think I could do this. He was working as a dishwasher at a place. He's like, I don't think I can do this. And I was like, you never know until you have the conversation. We had a conversation after class, and I ended up meeting with him and his parents. And his parents were like, well, we'll co-sign for you and everything like that. And after crunching in numbers and everything based on what we wanted to do, what he wanted to do, he didn't even have to have a co-signer. And at the end of it all, it was so cool just how proud he was of himself. It was really, really cool to see that.
Well, you just bought a house. How proud of yourself were you? As a husband and a father.
Yeah, no, it's
a big deal.
Absolutely. Like, living in apartments, our last apartment, we had a neighbor who my son was learning to walk, and we were on the top floor, granted, but he would stumble and fall. She was just a nightmare. She'd scream and hit broom against the ceiling and stuff. And I have like a 2-year-old walking around. Like, of course it's loud and clunky, and he drops things every 2 seconds.
But he weighs 10 pounds.
He weighs 20 pounds. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's not like a 200-pound guy falling over.
It was a terrible situation. And now being able to be in our house and run around and scream and be crazy, watching my dog. I was looking at my dog today because he was on the back porch and it was cold. But I've had this dog since I graduated high school. He's 15 years old. So I'm 33, right? He's 15 years old, but he's on the back porch chilling in the sun, just laying there, stoked, loving life. And like, it's an undescribable, feeling of accomplishment that it gives me, for sure.
Our second kid was just born 1986.
Yeah.
And Jacqueline was like 2.5 or something. And we closed on our house in July. And Donnie was born in May. We closed in July, and it was one of the proudest days of my life. It was just like, oh, right, I got my house. I got my wife and my kids a house.
Yeah.
Now this house was it was a new build. It had dirt everywhere. No landscaping was included, no fencing, no sprinkler system. It was 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, 2-car garage, paid $97,000 for it. I think $98,000. It's worth it's a 500. I wish I'd have kept it.
Yeah.
It was 500. It's probably about $550,000 house now off of Bowles and Kipling and in Littleton. But it was still one of the coolest days of my life. And then when we moved up and bigger house and everything a few years, 7-8 years later, that was it's just such an integral part, because it's not just a house, it's your family. Like it's all the memories, like your dog and your kids, like you're going to remember so many important things about this.
Exactly. And you have to live somewhere, but like may as well make it an investment too. Like that's the coolest part about real estate is you have to live somewhere. You're going to have memories. You're going to have all this stuff. First of all, having something that's yours is truly special, but also in the background, knowing that it's doing work for you and you're able to move up and do different things like that. That's one of the things that I love the most.
The part that's interesting, because I see some rhetoric out there now. Couldn't agree with you more. I couldn't agree more. But I see rhetoric out there, people that write, it's like, well, housing isn't that great of an investment really because of how expensive it is and how expensive it is to transact and how expensive property taxes and insurance and all that things goes on. It's like, and my argument to that is like, fair enough. You're right. You have to pay for all the maintenance. Property taxes go up. Insurance goes up. Fair enough. Who do you think's paying for that when you rent?
Yeah.
Because the landlord's not eating it.
Yeah, for sure.
The landlord raises your rent every year on purpose because the costs keep going up. So my question is, do you want to pay off his mortgage or do you want to pay off yours? And
exactly.
My answer is I want to pay off mine. Yeah, it's a hassle. Yeah, I have to fix the broken refrigerator and I have to, if my furnace breaks, I got to buy a new furnace, but it's my house and I get to live there and I get to make my own memories. And I think it's a big deal. It's a huge deal.
Absolutely. And just like, the other argument there too, I think is that the more expensive your house, the more it makes technically. If you think from an appreciation standpoint. Yeah,
you want 5% on 500,000 or 5% on 750.
So many people are always like, and I have this conversation with a lot of clients. They're always, how much should I put down? Like, what's the best amount for me to put down? And I always say the least amount that makes you comfortable with your monthly payment. Because your house isn't going to make any money off of how much you have in your house. Your house is going to make the same amount of money.
It's a great way to say that.
So put the least amount down that makes you comfortable with your monthly payment, and then use your other money for other investments. Hang on to your cash. Yeah, hang on to your cash. Stay liquid for repairs. Right.
Well, stay liquid for liquidity's sake. Like it's always good to have money and not need it.
Yeah.
Than it is to need it and not.
Well, and the other big thing too about housing that I've come to realize, because I've been networking, in coaching, we learn about financial advisors and the power of that and everything as well. Right. But I've been having a lot of retirement conversations and just learning about people's retirement and how stuff works like that. And the net income or the net worth of someone who owns a home is so much more than someone who's rented their whole life.
It's like 40. The net worth of a homeowner in America is 40 times greater.
Yeah, and so many people are relying on Social Security. It's like Social Security is going to be my only income, when I retire. And that's not a lot. That's not going to be enough for most people's lives. And most people have not, I forgot the statistic, but it was like 30% of people or something are adequately saved for retirement.
Yeah. No, it's a high percentage that are not.
Yeah.
And that's where I think, I think you're making a difference. You've changed everything about the future of that. Not just that person, but that person's family, everybody in their family. So we say one of our purposes here is to make someone's life, make people's lives better. Because when you make one life better, you make a lot of other lives better too. And so it's a cool way to think about it. So talk about the hard part about this business when you get going is getting, I should say the hard part. One of the difficult challenges is getting partnerships with real estate agents, partnerships with financial advisors, all probably not as difficult. And then, but the real estate agents, because I think that they're probably the biggest source of new business opportunities for us. Talk about what that's been like for you and when you first started and what it's like now and some of the challenges that you've experienced, the good and the bad. What have you learned along the way?
Yeah. So working with real estate agents, what I've learned is I used to be very intimidated by everyone. And what I've learned is most of them don't do any business and there's no need to be intimidated, right? Or I used to think
Or
whenever
they
I
do
would,
very little business.
very little, right?
Based on how they act.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe what the persona is.
Yeah.
Or when I would be working with a listing agent, I would always put this listing agent on this pedestal, right? Because I'm like, oh, they have a listing. But then now with technology, I've learned to do some research on people. And you can find out pretty quickly, like, you don't even know what you're talking about,
Right.
sometimes. So I think number one has been meeting people eye to eye and not going into realtor appointments thinking that they're better than me. I still have imposter syndrome sometimes, for sure. A lot of times.
It's common, dude.
But I always come into the point of like, and I've learned this is, are we a good fit? It's not just, hey, I want to work with you. Like, I want you to work with me. And there are so many real estate agents out there and there's so many opportunities, like you were saying, that you don't need to mesh with anyone. Really, I don't even have the bandwidth to mesh with that many people. Really, I want to have a good group of people that consistently refer me and ideally only me or mostly me, and that I can pour back into and help grow their business. I don't really want to have a bunch of one-offs here and there and, not be able to go deep with people because it's all about relationships. And as well, once you have a deal and maybe you get into hot water and you have to strategize and structure and, have difficult conversations, if you're doing that with someone that you have a relationship with, the teamwork is so much better. So I think that that's been one big thing. And then what would I say is the other thing? The other thing is just really listening to people. Right. Instead of going into a meeting and word vomiting about every single thing I can do, it's talking to them and, trying to be a better listener than I am a talker. Ask questions about themselves and hear what they're saying.
Get them talking.
And reciprocate it. And, not like make it all about mortgage all the time, because that's how the best relationships form. And essentially that's the way you stand out, because most lenders go in there and say, I have 987 products and I do all these different things and my interest rates are the best and I'm going to help you get XYZ and I'm going to pay for all these things, right? But people don't care about that. Like, they want a friend. They want someone that when I send you a deal, you're going to do a good job. You're going to take care of the client. You're going to make me look like a rock star. And I like working with you. And I think the part where people fail is they don't value the part where the person needs to like working with you, So that
I like your take that you don't have to work with everybody and there's plenty of people to work with. I think that what's newer people struggle with is, but I don't have enough business and I need to do it now. I need business now. That's probably the toughest thing to get over, is having the patience to go like, I'm looking for the right partnership and not any partnership.
Yeah.
Because I think at first you'll take anything, right?
Yeah. And I think another thing too for new people is like, when I say that, you're not burning bridges. It's like, I don't want to work with you and, I'm going to leave and be rude or anything. I always leave the door open. If you want to send me a deal, I'll work with you. But I'm not going to be actively pursuing you and like, trying to get your business if I think we're not a good fit. So I think that that's really important for people. And then really just trying to differentiate yourself. One thing that's really helped me on moving to multiple markets has been networking with partners who can introduce me to other people, and then figuring out something that's different outside of mortgages. I've invested a lot in coaching and social media and digital branding and stuff. So one thing that I do to separate
You're doing a really
myself,
good job there too, dude.
Thank you. One thing I do to separate myself is I try to share what I learn from all of my masterminds and different things with agents. And that helps me stand out a little bit more. And, there's the analogy of like, most loan officers go into an agent meeting looking for a withdrawal right away, right? You have to make deposits in any account before you can make a withdrawal. Right. So I think that's
well said.
That's a thing.
Yeah, well said. It sounds like you're doing a really good job of listening to the coaching that you're getting, because I know the coaching that you're getting through Go is really good stuff. It's as good as anything I've been associated with.
It's absolutely changed my business since I started coaching. And this is a thing too, people who are afraid to invest in themselves. When I went on my loan officer journey that we talked about, I was seeking out coaching because I wanted mentorship. I knew I could do it, but I really needed some direction.
Yeah, direction's helpful.
But what I found too is that if you don't have a little bit of skin in the game, you don't care. And you won't do the stuff. And they probably won't even take you as serious. You won't get the same level of care as someone who's paying. Right. So
yeah, I think I always say there's 4 parts to this business that are really critical. The first part is what's your vision, what's your dream, what's your goal? What does this look like in 5 years for you?
Yeah.
Tell me what that looks like. And is that crystal clear for you? Like, I don't think people spend enough time dreaming and coming up with this clear vision of what they want and why. And the why behind it's really important. Like, I mean, everybody wants to make $1 million and live in a mansion, have 6-pack abs. But why? Why is that important to you, and what's that going to mean for you? And when you get down to like the 5th time of asking them why, you probably are getting to the essence of what's really important to them. I think that's what's critical. So that's the first part, is getting clear on the vision, the dreams, and the goals. And then the second part is mindset management, which I think is completely overlooked. I think that daily mindset management is it's because without the mindset management, I mean, your vision is where am I going? But if you're always in a bad mood and you're always thinking the worst thoughts and you're always having imposter syndrome, as you said, if you're not taking care of yourself physically, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not eating right, if you're not working out, then everything else is going to be worse, because then the next 2 things are skills and then action. Right? What skills do you need? What skills do you have? What skills do you need to improve on? And that's like never ending, by the way.
Yeah.
That's not anything that you can go like, okay, now you have all the skills, go. It's like, we're going to give you like, you need the rudimentary skills so that you can start, but then you have to go and you have to get going, and then it's activity. And I always say that everybody wants, I want to make $1 million. Yeah, that would be great. Or $500,000, whatever. Yeah, I would love to do that. And then like, okay, but do you have the drive to do the other things? Because everybody would want that. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. It wouldn't be worth anything. Yeah. And so it sounds like you've really started to hone this stuff in at a really nice, deep level. And congratulations, your success.
Thank you.
You're doing really good. Because when I met you, you were still trying to you were still trying to feeling your way out. And that was about 1.5 years ago. Yeah. So you've had a great year. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a lot. And I've went through a lot of changes and a lot of self-development and a lot of reflection. And just like what you said, like
plus you're having kids.
Yeah. It's a whole new reason why, but I think about that myself, is like, who do I want to be, and what does that person look like, and what does their schedule look like, and how can I make my schedule reflect that?
Right.
And how does that person show up in their personal lives and with their family and at the gym? Like, basically, like, what's on the other side of you, and like, what's the ideal person? Like, what does that look like?
Right.
And how can I be that person? And the other thing too is remembering to take a break sometimes. Like, it's hard in this industry when you are always driven and you're always looking for the different things, to take a step back and just relax for every once in a while. Right. Hang out.
And it's hard because you do have to be, when you're first getting going, you have to be available.
Yeah. Right.
You can't really have a weekend off.
Yeah. I mean, even
you
still,
can have a weekend off, but you got to be able to answer the phone.
Yeah. And you better have a plan, if you're going to be taking time off. I think having like, what's been good for me is having like someone that will cover you, but also having a plan of like, if I'm taking the weekend off, I'm never fully off yet.
No,
I'm not to that point. I still will check my phone.
That takes a while.
I'll still go to a place.
Yeah, that takes a while. Yeah. It takes a while for everybody.
Yeah.
That's not something that's easy to do. It's tough to do. It can be done.
Yeah. Well, you
got to build the team. You got to build the big team.
I just got a loan partner full time.
Oh, right on.
So I'm excited to see what that looks like and like where I can go with that.
That's very cool.
I'm excited.
Cache, this has been fun. You got any questions? Do you have anything you want to share that would be really cool for like a newer loan officer who's just getting going to hear?
What should I share?
I think one of the things that I really appreciate, because I was the same way when I was first getting in this business. I'm like, I know you can make a lot. There's like, this is just, how do you do the transactions? How do you do a lot of it? It's just, how do you do them?
Yeah.
Because there's plenty out there. I think the investment that you've made in your development professionally as getting coached has been really valuable.
That's what I would say. Like, don't be afraid to take the opportunities for yourself. You have to believe in yourself and you have to take the jump. I spent more money on self-development this year almost as much as I used to make in previous years. Right.
Right.
But that made I grew like, 40% or 60%, actually 60%. And that is directly related to the investment I made in myself and the rooms I've put myself in.
Right.
I didn't grow up with people who were super driven. Like my parents, they're driven, but more of the go to college, go to work, do this thing. Like on mortgage, it's completely different. It's all on us. We're our own business. It's really about how we want to run things. And so just take the investment and jump in and believe in yourself. I think is the most important thing.
This has been great, dude.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This has been really fun.
Of course,
I appreciate it. Well, that's it for today, guys. This has been Make the Call. This is Cache Nies. Thanks for coming. Enjoy the episode. Please share this, like it, and give us a rating. And thanks for coming. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Make the Call with Dave Gallegos, brought to you by Zenith Home Loans. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to the show anywhere you listen to podcasts, and share the show with a friend or colleague who would also find value.